This is Katherine Mayo. She was an American historian. In 1927, she wrote a book called Mother India, where she criticized the Indian way of living. The book was written in opposition to the Indian independence movement. It attacked Indian society and culture, trying to argue that India treats its minorities and women cruelly and was therefore unfit for self rule. One of the key arguments in her book was how women in India were mistreated. She cited things like child marriage, the Parda system, lack of education for women, domestic violence, and even the practice of sati. The book received a mixed response in the West. Some supported it, while others questioned its one sided portrayal. But in India, it caused a massive outrage. It was seen as a deeply biased and racist account of the Indian society. People protested against it, and in many places, the book was even publicly burned. Gandhiji famously said it read like it was written by a drain inspector, sent to report only on the sanitation of a house. Apart from that, there were many other responses to the book, but one stood out more than the rest. Mehboob Khan's film Mother India. Now, the film wasn't a direct rebuttal, but it acted as a powerful metaphor for a post independence India. The story was about a strong Indian woman, representing the nation itself, resilient, self sacrificing, and full of integrity. The film starred Nargis, Sunil Dutt, Rajendra Kumar, and Raj Kumar, and it made history. It became the first Indian film to be nominated for Best International Feature Film at the Academy Awards in 1958. But the impact of Indian cinema doesn't just stop there. Commercial Hindi cinema was seen as the torchbearer for Indian filmmaking. Films like Mughal-e-Azam, Pyaasa, Kaagaz Ke Phool, Avara, and many others weren't just rich in craft, they also gave audiences a powerful, emotional, and immersive movie going experience. These films had unforgettable storytelling, iconic performances, and legendary music. And more importantly, they captured the emotional, social, and political landscape of a newly independent India, helping shape its identity through cinema. But what happened after that though? The soul of Hindi cinema, once rooted in poetry, politics, romance, and realism, slowly began to shift. By the late 1960s and early 70s, the country itself was going through economic hardships, political instability, and rising social tensions, and cinema began reflecting that. This was the era of the angry young man. A new kind of hero emerged, less poetic, more rebellious. And leading the charge was Amitabh Bachchan with films like Zanjeer, Diwar, and Sholay. These weren't bad films by any means. In fact, many of them are masterpieces in their own right. But the tone had changed. The moral complexity of Pyasa or Kaagaz Ke Phool was replaced by anti heroes who fought corrupt systems with their fists, not their ideals. By the 1980s, this formula was stretched thin. Cinema became increasingly predictable. Plot lines grew thinner, action sequences got louder, and female characters were often reduced to side roles. And it wasn't just critics noticing this change, filmmakers themselves were vocal about it. In a 1989 interview with a French journalist, Pierre Andre Boutin, Satyajit Ray reflected on the backlash to his 1960 film Devi, which critiqued religious dogmatism. He recalled how many accused him of being anti Hindu simply because he tackled sensitive themes. He said, "We have a fairly backward audience here. In spite of the film society movement and all that, if you consider the audience at large, it is a backward audience." He described the Indian audience as largely unsophisticated, shaped by years of exposure to commercial Hindi cinema. Yet he remained committed to making the kind of films he believed in. And this gap between filmmakers striving for depth and an audience conditioned by formula only widened during this time. While there were still bright spots like Masoom, Ardh Satya, or Saransh, mainstream cinema increasingly leaned on masala, action, comedy, melodrama, songs all blended into a crowd pleasing package. By the 1990s, with economic liberalization came a new shift. The non resident Indian market opened up. Suddenly, the Indian hero wasn't fighting in a village, he was dancing in Switzerland. Films like Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum symbolized this globalized, glossy turn. Again, these films weren't bad. They connected with a generation coming to terms with identity, diaspora, and aspiration, but they also marked a move away from grounded storytelling. Then came the 2000s and the early 2010s. Technology improved, budgets got bigger, and the formula became tighter. You had item songs, massive set pieces, and often very little story. Directors like Rohit Shetty, Sajid Khan, and Prabhu Deva delivered box office hits like Golmaal, Houseful, Rowdy Rathod. Films made for quick laughs and big returns. And as the industry leaned harder into profit driven filmmaking, something started to fade. The quiet sadness of Pyaasa, the moral struggle of Mother India, the lyrical intensity of Mughal-e-Azam, all that became rare. Hindi cinema was no longer seen as the torchbearer of Indian filmmaking. That baton had quietly passed to the south, particularly Malayalam and Tamil cinema, where storytelling still thrived. Budgets were modest and craft was king. Hindi cinema drifted further into formula and spectacle. South Indian industries quietly evolved. Directors like Mani Ratnam, Bharatan, Padmarajan, and later Lijo Jose Pellicerri, Vetrimaran, and Thiyagarajan Kumararaja began pushing the envelope in storytelling, form, and performance. They were experimenting. Without the crutches of the item songs, forced comedy, or larger than life tropes, and audiences noticed. This shift became even more visible with the rise of OTT platforms. Suddenly, language barriers melted. People in Delhi were watching Malayalam movies with subtitles. People in Mumbai were raving about Tamil neo-noir thrillers. Cinema from the south was no longer regional, it was national. Films like Jallikattu, Super Deluxe, Kumbalangi Nights, Jai Bhim, and The Great Indian Kitchen didn't just win acclaim, they redefined what Indian cinema could be. Even in the commercial space, Telugu blockbusters like Bahubali, Pushpa, RRR, and Salar proved that you could balance spectacle with strong storytelling and cultural rootedness. Hindi cinema, meanwhile, struggled to keep up. Repetitive plots, nepotism, and disconnect from the audience led to a series of high profile flops. Ironically, the same audience that once looked up to Bollywood had started looking southward. Of course, filmmakers like Anurag Kashyap, Zoya Akhtar, and Neeraj Ghaiwan have tried to push the envelope, and newer audiences with streaming platforms and film festivals are slowly rediscovering the value of meaningful cinema. Hindi cinema still has remarkable talent actors, writers, composers, directors wanting to be heard. The question is, will the system let them in? With streaming platforms, independent productions, and global collaboration, there is an opportunity to rediscover what made Indian cinema magical in the first place. Not just Hindi cinema, but Indian cinema as a whole is at a crossroads. Will we chase viral trends or will we embrace stories that matter? Will we flatten everything into a mass market entertainment or will we invest in nuance, diversity, and risk? There are encouraging signs. Films like Code, Ship of Theseus, Tumbad, and even mainstream titles like Gully Boy or Article 15 have shown that it is possible to bridge the gap. The future will depend on both the audience's curiosity and the industry's courage. Because in a country as complex and cinematic as India, mediocrity should never be our default. But the question remains, can Hindi cinema return to the power, poetry, and purpose it once had? Or is the golden age just a memory and black and white? What do you think? I think the future is bright. I am a hopeful person. I think Hindi cinema will return to its glory that it once had. On OTT, we see web series like Panchayat or the recent one Gram Chikitsalay. So we know there is no dearth of talent. I believe that this talent will emerge into mainstream Hindi cinema as well. So, what do you think? Put your comments down below, and I hope you like this video. Make sure to subscribe and click on that bell icon. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye bye.